Namaste Ram Ram. Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Gurur Devo Maheshwarah, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Harihi Om. Namaste to all. Today is the 47th class of Bhagavad Gita. We are in Bhagavad Gita 9th chapter, Navamodhyayaha. We completed the first 10 shlokas, I think, last week. We'll continue the next, but before that, next 10, but before then, let us chant the first 10 shlokas first. Can I have volunteers? Yaru try pandrel. Okay. Ninga unmute panla. You should be able to unmute yourself. Fan on the matron.
Namaskaram.
Namaste.
Om Shri Paramatmani Namaha. Atha Navamudhyayaha Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yogaha Shri Bhagavanuvacha Idam tu te guhyatamam Pravakshyam Yanasuyave Jnanam Vijnana Sahitam Yajñatva Mokshayase Subhat.
Mokshyase.
Mokshayase Subhat. Rajavidya Rajaguhyam Pavitramidamuttamam Pratyakshabagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartumavyayam Ashrattana Purushaha Ashrattadhana Purushaha Dharmasyasya Parantapa Abrapyamam Nivattanti.
First word another?
Abrapyamam.
Bra iliyanga. Third pradane irukku. First pada. Aprapya. Praptam சொல்லுவோம் இல்லையா அந்த praptam. Aprapya.
Aprapyamam.
Correct.
Aprapyamam nivatande mrityu samsara vartmani. Maya tadamidam sarvam jagadavyakta murtina matstani sarva bhutani nachaham teshvabastidaha nacha mastani bhutani pashyami yogamaishwaram bhudaprinnaccha bhudastaha mamatma bhuta bhavanaha.
அங்க எல்லாமே அங்க you read correction. It is bhuta, not bhudha. Bhuta ta correct பண்ணிக்கோங்க. Bhuta brinna cha bhutastaha
mahatma. Okay.
Mamatma அப்புறம்
bhuta bhavana.
Very good. Correct. Bhuta bhavana. Correct. Very good. Continue.
Continue பண்ணட்டுமா?
இங்க இவர் கண்ணன்ஜி மெசேஜ் பண்ணிருக்கார். அவர் வேணா ஃபைட் ட்ரை பண்றோம். ரொம்ப நல்லா இருந்தது. பெரியவா சரணம். எங்க இருக்கே? there you are. Can you நீங்க 5 ட்ரை பண்றீங்களா?
நமஸ்தே.
நமஸ்காரம்.
யதா காஷஸ்திதோ நித்யம் வாயு சர்வத்ர கோமஹான் ததா சர்வாணி பூதானி மதஸ்தானித்யுபதாரய.
Last word, one more time.
ததா சர்வாணி பூதானி மத்ஸ்தானித்யுபதாரய.
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 Correct.
सर्वभूतानि कौन्तेय प्रकृतिं यान्ति मामिकाम् कल्पक्षये पुनस्तानि कल्पादौ विसृजाम्यहम्.
அந்த விஸ்ருஜாம்யஹம்ல ஒரு எக்ஸ்ட்ரா இஸ் கேக்குறது பாருங்க. So it is just விஸ்ருஜாம்யஹம்.
Okay,
இதெல்லாம் அது because we are used to Tamil, right? That is automatically added. அப்ராப்ய plus பிராப்ய ஒரு இப்ப we automatically add. அதே மாதிரி இங்க விஸ்ருஜாம்யஹம். It is not விஸ்ருஜாம்யஹம். அந்த is avoid பண்ணிக்கோ. நானே இப்பதான் பிராக்டிஸ் பண்ணி I am trying to pronounce it the right way.
விஸ்ருஜாம்யஹம். விஸ்ரு வந்து அது வந்து லோயபிள் இருக்கணும்.
அங்க வந்து அந்த இது கிடையாது. You don't have the halantam there. You don't have மெய் எழுத்து there. It is just visru. It is not visru.
Okay. विसृजाम्यहम्.
Very good.
प्रकृतिं स्वामवष्टभ्य विसृजामि पुनः पुनः भूतग्राममिमं कृत्स्नमवशं प्रकृतेर्वशात्.
Anga there is a split இல்லையா? கிருத்ஸ்னம்
कृत्स्नं अवसं
அவஷம்
अवशं
शिवाशा.
न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जयः.
धनञ्जय विसर्गम இல்லையே.
न च मां तानि कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय उदासीनवदासीनमसक्तं तेषु कर्मसु मयाध्यक्षेण प्रकृतिषु यते सचराचरम् हेतुनानेन कौन्तेय जगत् विपरिवर्तते.
Very good. Anga prakritihi, there is a visarga stop there. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi. Prakriti suyate you can say, but then that is not the chandas we are following for the rest of the shlokas. So there is a stop there with the visarga. Very nice. Ninga first time chant pandrilla?
Amma, first time.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank
it
you.
is very nice to see new people coming forward to chant. Very nice. Shri Guru Namaha. I think endane pannirkom.
Okay.
Okay, who can repeat இன்னைக்கு? Anybody who would like to try? Illana, I'll call Haridra. Rajalakshmi, நீங்க சொல்ற கலா. Okay, 5. I think Rajalakshmi avalum she has raised. We can have Kalaji and Rajalakshmi ji. I think Sabita ji ninga next week ninga third ah சொன்னதுனால. Rajalakshmi ji ninga can you try unmuting?
Yes.
Repeat பண்றீங்களா?
பண்றோம்.
Okay, number 11. Avajananti mam moodhaha.
Avajanti mam moodhaha.
Avajananti mam moodhaha.
Avajananti mam moodhaha.
Moodaha. Anga there is a
Moodaha.
Ellaru note பண்ணிக்கோங்க. There is a visarga you have to add there. Manushim tanumashritam.
Manushum tanumashritam.
இல்லையே படிங்கோ. என்ன language பார்க்கற?
தமிழ்ல இருக்குது.
Okay.
Manushum tanumashritam.
Anga manusham is not there. Manushim tanumashritam.
Manushim tanumashritam.
Param bhavam ajanantah. There is a visarga stop there.
Param bhavam ajanantah.
Very good. Mama bhuta maheshwaram.
Mama bhuta maheshwaram.
அந்த இடத்துல நீங்க தமிழ் படிக்கிறதுனால we say bhudha and mageshwaram. It is not mageshwaram, it is maheshwaram. அதே மாதிரி when we pronounce bhagavan, we are used to saying it as bhagavan. It is not bhagavan, it is Shri Bhagavanu vacha. அத நம்ம சொல்லும்போது we say it as bhagavan because தமிழ்ல அப்படி சொல்லி பழக்கம் நமக்கு. அத வந்து fix பண்ணிக்கோங்க. Avajananti mam moodhaha. Manushim tanumashritam.
अवजानन्ति मामूढा मानुषं धनुमाश्रितम्.
Why do you say manusham or manushum? It is manushim.
मानुषीं
Tanumashritam.
धनुमाश्रितम्.
Illa. It is not Danumashritam. It is Tanumashritam.
तनु
Ama.
तनुमाश्रितम्.
Param bhavamajanantah mama bhutamaheshwaram.
परं पावमजानन्दो मम भूतमहेश्वरम्.
நீங்க வந்து தமிழ் டெக்ஸ்ட் பார்க்கறதுனால there is a lot of mistake in the pronunciation. Would you mind if I ask somebody else to repeat?
Okay. Thank you ji.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Asha ji, can you try?
Ram Vani ma'am.
Namaste. Avajananti mamudhaha. There is a visarga there.
Avajananti mamudhaha.
Dha is mahapranam. Mudhaha.
Mudhaha.
Manushim tanumashritam.
Manushim tanumashritam.
Param bhavamajanantah.
Param bhavamajanantah.
Mama bhutamaheshwaram.
Mama bhutamaheshwaram.
Avajananti mamudhaha. Manushim tanumashritam.
Avajananti mamudhaha manushim tanumashritam.
Very good. Param bhavamajanantah mama bhutamaheshwaram.
Param bhavamajanantah mama bhutamaheshwaram.
Correct. Very good. Number 12. Moghasha mogha karmanah. There is a visargam there.
Mogasha moga karmanah.
Mogha jnana vichetasah.
Mogha jnana vichetasah.
Rakshasi masurim chaiva.
Rakshasi masurim chaiva.
Prakritim mohinim shritaha.
Prakriti mohinim shritaha.
Very good. Moghasha mogha karmanah. Mogha jnana vichetasah.
Mogasha moga karmanah.
Karmanah.
Karmanah. Mogha jnana vichetasah.
One more time, Asha ji.
Mogasha moga karmanah. Moga jnana vichetasah.
Third word திருப்பி சொல்லுங்க.
Third word. Mogha
Vaigha.
Mogha. Liya.
Dirgham illiye. It doesn't have dirgham, no. Mogha jnana. There is no dirgham there, no.
Mogha jnana vichetasah.
Good. Rakshasi masurim chaiva. Prakritim mohinim shritaha.
Rakshasi masurim chaiva. Prakritim mohinim shritaha.
Prakritim. அந்த word சொல்லுங்க.
Prakritim.
Correct. Mohinim shritaha.
Mohinim shritaha.
Very good. Mahatmanastu mam partha.
Mahatmanastu मां पार्थ
दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः
दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः
भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः. There is a visarga stopping there.
भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः.
Correct. Bhajanti ananya manasah. Chekumbodhu bhajantyανanya manasah.
भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः
ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्.
ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्.
Very good. Ongloda Mahapranam pronunciation has improved a lot. Mahatmanastu mam partha daivim prakritimashritaha.
महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः.
அந்த இடத்துல மானாஸ்து கேட்டது. One more time.
मानस्तु महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः.
Very good. Bhajantyανanya manasah ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्.
भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्.
सततं कीर्तयन्तो माम्.
सततं कीर्तयन्तो माम्.
यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः.
यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः.
I'm stopping the dha slightly there so that the Mahapranam takes precedence. Dridhavrataha.
दृढव्रताः.
Correct. Namasyantascha mam bhaktya.
नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या.
Bhaktya Mahapranam. Bhaktya.
भक्त्या
Nityayukta upasate.
नित्ययुक्ता उपासते.
Very good. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantascha dridhavrataha.
सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः.
Namasyantascha mam bhaktya nityayukta upasate.
नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते.
Correct. அந்த இஷ்ச அந்த இடத்துல ஸ்லைட்டா சகாரம் கேக்குறது ஆஷாஜி. சோ அந்த இடத்துல யதன் தஷ்ச இருக்கு இல்லையா, த இஷ் ச, அந்த இடத்துல ஸ்லைட்டா யதன் தஷ்ச கேக்குறது, இஸ் சகாரம் கேக்குறது. அத வந்து நீங்க சிவாஷா அந்த இஷ் பார்த்து ப்ரொனவுன்ஸ் பண்ணிக்கோங்க.
யதந்தஷ்ச கரெக்ட்டா?
இப்ப கரெக்ட். யதன் தஷ்ச அது நான் கேட்கும் போது யதன் தஷ்ச அப்படின்னு அந்த சகா it was I was hearing as அது பார்த்து ப்ரொனவுன்ஸ் பண்ணிக்கோங்க. ஞான யக்ஞேன சாப்யன்யே.
ஞான யக்ஞேன சாப்யன்யே.
யஜந்தோ மாமுபாசதே.
யஜந்தோ மாமுபாசதே.
ஏகத்வேன ப்ருதக்த்வேன.
ஏகத்வேன ப்ருதக்த்வேன.
Very good. Bahudha vishwato mukham.
बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्.
ज्ञान यज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते.
ज्ञान यज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते.
एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्.
एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम्.
Very good. Excellent. Thank you so much, Ashaji. Very well.
Okay.
I enjoyed it.
Oh, okay.
I think next was
Very Vashanam Ram Ram.
Ram Ram. Oh, I actually missed Kalaji. Irkala? Kala Ramesh. I don't see her. I don't know if it's Kalaka. I'll move to Kala B then. 1 second. I'm just looking through the messages and unmuting in order. Unmute Pannela.
Gurubhyo Namaha.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
16.
Okay.
Aham kraturaham yajnyaha.
Aham kraturaham yajnyaha.
Very good. Swadhahamaham
Swadhahamaham
Mantrohamahame vajyam. There is a split there.
Mantrohamahame vajyam.
Mantrohamahame vajyam.
Mantrohamahame vajyam.
Perfect. Ahamagniraham hutam.
Ahamagniraham hutam.
Aham kraturaham yajnyaha. Swadhahamaham
Aham kraturaham yajnyaha. Swadhahamaham
Mantrohamahame vajyam. Ahamagniraham hutam.
Mantrohamahame vajyam. Ahamagniraham hutam.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Okay. 70. Next one also has a Visarga pronunciation there. Pita hamasya jagataha.
Pita hamasya jagataha.
Mata dhata pitamaha.
Mata dhata pitamaha.
Vedyam pavitra monkaraha. There is a Visarga there.
Vedyam pavitra monkaraha.
Very good. Riksamaya jurevacha.
Riksamaya jurevacha.
Pitahamasya jagataha. Mata dhata pitamaha.
Pitahamasya jagataha. Mata dhata pitamaha.
Very good. Vedyam pavitra monkaraha. Riksamaya jurevacha.
Vedyam pavitra monkaraha. Riktamayujarevacha.
Very good. 18th. Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi.
Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi.
Nivasa sharanam sukrit.
Nivasa sharanam sukrit.
Very good. Prabhavav pralayasthanam.
Prabhavah pralayasthanam.
Prabhavav pralayasthanam.
Prabhavav pralayasthanam.
நீங்க அங்க இப்ப சொல்றீங்களா if சொல்றீங்களா?
If.
Okay. Prabhavav pralayasthanam.
Prabhavav pralayasthanam.
Nidhanam bijamavyayam.
निधानं बीजमव्ययम्
Very good. Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi.
गतिर्बत
Sorry, I'll tell the whole
sorry
line. One second. Gatir bharta prabhu sakshi. Nivasa sharanam sukrit.
गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवास शरणं सुहृत्
Prabhavah pralayasthanam. Nidhanam bijamavyayam.
प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानं निधानं बीजमव्ययम्.
Very good. 19. இது கொஞ்சம் little bit twisted. We will try. Tapam yahamaham varsham.
तपां यहमहं वर्षम्
Nigrinham yutsrijami cha.
निगृह्णां युत्सुजामि च.
You have to flip the pronunciation here. So nigr ich na irukku illaya. You have to flip it as nigr in ha.
निगृह्णं युत्
Nigrinham.
Please repeat, madam.
Nigrinham yutsrijami cha.
Nigruṇham yutsujami cha.
Correct. So whenever you have the ich, which is the half her, the மெய்யெழுத்து her, and then after that you have any of the nasal consonants. Nasal consonants is the, if you know Tamil, is the vallinam mellinam, the I think yangyana namana. I hope I got it right. So on the nasal consonant vandadna, you have to say the nasal consonant first and then you have to say the ha. This is the probably the only exception. Maybe there is one more in Sanskritam. Unlike other languages, I think I've mentioned this in the previous classes. What you see is what you read. So phone is not phone, it is phone. You have to know it is phone, right? But in Sanskritam, what you see is what you actually pronounce. This exception is only when in the udaram, which is the stomach of hakaram, there is a nasal consonant, na anunasika aksharam. You say the anunasika aksharam, the nasal consonant first, and then you say the hakaram, ha. So it becomes nigr in ham yut srijami. Okay, I will try one more time. Tapam yahamaham varsham.
Tapam yahamaham varsham.
Nigrinham yutsrijami cha.
Nigruṇham yutsujami cha.
Excellent. Amritam chaiva mrityuscha.
Amritam chaiva mrityuscha.
Sadasachaham arjuna.
Sadasachaham arjuna.
Tapam yahamaham varsham. Nigrinham yutsrijami cha.
Tapam yahamaham varsham. Nigruhnam
Ham.
Nigruṇham yutsujami cha.
Amritam chaiva mrityuscha. Sadasachaham arjuna.
Amritam chaiva mrityuscha. Sadasachaham arjuna.
Very good. Last one. Traividya mam somapah puta papaha.
Traividyamam somapah puta papa.
Papaha. And there is a research. Papaha.
Traividyamam somapah भूतपापाः
यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते
यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते
वेरी गुड ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकं स्प्लिट देयर
ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोक लोकः
लोकं
लोकं ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम्
वेरी गुड अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान्
अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान्
वेरी नीट त्रैविद्या मां सोमपाः पूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते
त्रैविद्या मां सोमपाः पूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते
ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान्
ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान्
excellent very nicely repeated thank you so much Shri Gurubhyo Namaha
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha thank you Guruji
very nice we'll run through again 11 to 20 and then pronunciation doubt in the I can repeat that alone avajananti mam mudhaah manushim tanumashritam param bhavamajanantah mama bhuta maheshwaram मोघाशा मोघकर्माणः मोघ ज्ञानाविचेतसः राक्षसीमासुरीं चैव प्रकृतिं मोहिनीं श्रिताः महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम् सततं कीर्तयन्तो मां यतन्तश्च दृढव्रताः नमस्यन्तश्च मां भक्त्या नित्ययुक्ता उपासते ज्ञानयज्ञेन चाप्यन्ये यजन्तो मामुपासते एकत्वेन पृथक्त्वेन बहुधा विश्वतो मुखम् अहं क्रतुरहं यज्ञः स्वधाहमहमौषधम् मन्त्रोऽहमहमेवाज्यम् अहमग्निरहं हुतम् पिताहमस्य जगतः माता धाता पितामहः वेद्यं पवित्रमोङ्कारः ऋक् सामयजुरेव च गतिर्भर्ता प्रभुः साक्षी निवासः शरणं सुहृत् प्रभवः प्रलयस्थानं निधानं बीजमव्ययम् तपां यहमहं वर्षं निगृह्णां युत्सृजामि च अमृतं चैव मृत्युश्च सदसच्चाहमर्जुन त्रैविद्या मां सोमपाः पूतपापाः यज्ञैरिष्ट्वा स्वर्गतिं प्रार्थयन्ते ते पुण्यमासाद्य सुरेन्द्रलोकम् अश्नन्ति दिव्यान् दिवि देव भोगान्. 13. महात्मानस्तु मां पार्थ दैवीं प्रकृतिमाश्रिताः भजन्त्यनन्यमनसः ज्ञात्वा भूतादिमव्ययम्. Bhajanti ananya manasaha becomes bhajantyανanya manasaha. I think that is a tough word there. 16. Aham, first line is easy. Aham kraturaham yajnaha swadhaham aushadham mantrohamahame vajyam. The word goes mantroha mahame vajyam. Aham agniraham hutam. Mantraha aham evajyam. Aham evajyam. Aham agnihi aham hutam. That is the split there. So the line goes aham kraturaham yajnaha Swadhaham aushadham mantrohamahame vajyam aham agniraham hutam. 13 and 16. 18 another. 18 is gathir bhartha prabhus sakshi nivasa sharanam sukrut. Enna doubt idla prabhavav pralayasthanam nidhanam bhija mavyayam. Bhijam avyayam is the split there. Gathir bharta prabhus sakshi nivasa sharanam sukrut prabhavav pralayasthanam nidhanam bija mavyayam. That is 18. 19. Tapam yahamaham. Tapami aham tapami aham varsham. So that is that there are two ahams there. Tapam yahamaham varsham nigrin ham yut srijami cha amritam chaiva mrityuscha sadasat chaham arjuna. I think that is okay. Tapam yahamaham varsham nigrin ham yut srijami cha. Yes, after the puta papa, there is a visarga pronunciation there. Traividya mam somapaf puta papa ha. Yagnirishva. We are stopping there, so we have to say the visarga. Okay. Summary of last week. Somebody had message saying they'll try explanation. Saraswati ji try pandrela. One second.
Hari Om.
Ram Namaste.
Hari Om Vaniji.
Namaste.
I'm just trying to tell the explanation. In the 9வது அத்தியாயத்துல ஞானம் எப்படிப்பட்டது and அது ஏன் ராஜ வித்யா ராஜ குஹ்யம் and மூணாவதாக ஏன் அர்ஜுனனை தேர்ந்தெடுத்து கிருஷ்ணன் கூறினார் என்று தெரிந்து கொள்றோம். So Krishna, he himself wants to part the information about this supreme knowledge and which is also confidential to Arjuna. Because Arjuna does not have the quality of jealousy. Arjuna, he has heard all the gunadisangal about Krishna, but still he does not feel the jealousy about him. And this is supreme. Supreme na, as it shows the path of bhakti yoga, which would lead to moksha. And this is secretive. Secretive, as we have yet to reach that state of mind to understand this bhakti yoga. That is why it is said secretive. So the path of bhakti yoga and அதை எப்படி கடைபிடிக்க வேணும் அதை பத்தி சொல்றதுதான் அந்த knowledge. So it is said Raja Vidya, that we are விதையில அது வந்து அரசு supreme அப்படின்னு சொல்றாரு. And he explains not only this, he explains the qualities of that supreme jnana as pure. Pure means devoid of likes and dislikes. And it is the best, uttamam. It can easily be practiced and it can be realized, experienced, pratyakshama, and it is everlasting. In the qualities அவர் describe பண்றார். Then thereafter, யாருக்கு இதுல faith இல்லையோ, those who do not have faith in this path of devotion, or who does not believe, they fall back into the birth-death cycle of life. Then Krishna spreads in all beings in an unmanifestation form. All are in him, but he is not in them.
Correct.
இதுக்கு ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிள் வந்து பனி, அந்த பனிக்கட்டியில எப்படி தண்ணீர் இருக்கோ, பனிக்கட்டியில தண்ணீர் இருக்கு, ஆனா அந்த தண்ணியில அந்த என்ன சொல்றது ஐஸ் பீசஸ் இல்லை. அதுதான் அந்த எக்ஸாம்பிள். And he is the ultimate source for all causes. Herself is the source of all creation. ஆதாரம் இல்லாத ஆகாயத்தில் காற்று வந்து எப்படி சஞ்சரிக்கிறதோ, எப்படி வீசுறதோ, எல்லாவற்றுக்கும் ஆதாரமாக பகவான் தாங்குகிறார்.
அந்த இடத்துல ஒரு எக்ஸாம்பிளோட சொன்னார். we also discussed
clay and pot இல்லையா?
ஆமா. எதுக்கு அந்த ஸ்பெசிபிக்கா why that ஆகாஷம் and vayu, what was the reason why Krishna has taken this example of everything அப்படினு we briefly
connection இல்லை, wind the connection இல்லை,
there is no touch.
Correct.
Beautiful.
அதுக்கப்புறம் பகவானோட சங்கல்பத்தினால் எல்லா பூதங்களும் பிறந்து வளர்ந்து அழிகின்றன. அவர் எல்லாவற்றையும் வியாபித்து இருக்கிறார். And he is the source of all creation. He is the ultimate source for all creation. At the end of millennium, all the manifestation enter in him. And at the beginning of next millennium, he creates once again. In the process, it goes on again and again. But all these activities are done by him without any attachment.
Correct. Asaktam.
So he is not bound by them. The activity, this karma nala, he is not bound by them because of the detachment. This material nature is one of his energy working under his supervision, producing all moving and non-moving things.
Characharam.
Characharam. Creation completely revolves around him. This is what I understood.
Beautiful. Romba nanna irundhathu. Very nice. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you. Gurubhyo Namaha.
Ram Ram. Okay, I think the summary was very crisp and to the point, and the main what was the main takeaway from each shlokam அப்படிங்கறது ரொம்ப அழகா சொன்னா. We also discussed some examples how we can, because he talks about this manifestation, the unmanifest state, and then how it is created again, and then we discussed a few examples around how we can visualize this or understand this in our mind அப்படினா. Can anybody give one example? I think we discussed 3 or 4 நினைக்கிறேன். ஏதாவது ஒன்னு யாரா சொல்றீங்களா? ஹரித்ரா இருக்கியா? ஹரித்ரா சொல்றியா? இன்னைக்கு என்ன ஹரித்ரா தூங்கி போயிட்டாளா? கோமதி மேம் சொல்றீங்களா?
அந்த மேனிஃபெஸ்டன் இத சொல்றதுக்கு அவர் பாட் எக்ஸாம்பிள் ஹி இஸ் டேக்கிங். அது வந்து எல்லாமே வந்து என்னுள்ளதான் இருக்குன்னா கூட நான் வந்து அதுக்குள்ளலாம் இல்ல வந்து பாட் வந்து மேட் ஆஃப் கிளே. பட் வந்து அது உடைஞ்சு போனா வந்து அது திருப்பி வந்து கிளேயா திருப்பி ஆறுது இல்ல. அதனால ஆனா ஆஃப்டர் மேனிஃபெஸ்டட் வந்து என் போல் ஆகுது இல்ல. அததான் சொல்றார். சோ
no, the pot is made out from clay. No, but the functions of the pot is different from what it is of the clay, right? Ana pot odanju pochuna, it goes back to the source. The source is again clay. என்ன டிஃபரன்ஸ்னா இதுல வந்து நம்ம இந்த உடைஞ்ச பாட்ல இருந்து we go back to the source which is the clay has a source which is Paramatma. The only difference is Paramatma does not have a source beyond him. அதுதான் அந்த இடத்துல உபமானம். So clay வந்து unmanifest stateல இருந்ததுன்னா manifest stateல it can take different forms. It can be a lamp, it can be a pot, it can be a jug, it can be anything, each having its own functionality. Now when the disintegration happens, when it goes to the unmanifest state, it again becomes clay. It might be broken, but it is still clay.
Yes. அது அவைகளுக்குள்ள அதுக்கு இருக்கிற குணங்கள்லாம் எனக்கு கிடையாது அப்படிங்கிறது.
Very good. This is one example. Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else for the second example? Second example. சொல்லுங்க உஷாஜி.
rope and snake சொன்னங்க. அதுல வந்து we see rope as a snake. Yeah, actually அது வந்து we are because it is all clouded in the darkல நமக்கு தெரியறது இல்ல, because our அஜ்ஞானம் is clouding our the knowledge, and that is why we are seeing that rope as a snake, and we are extremely concerned. But actually அந்த ஞானம் வரும்போது பார்த்தா அந்த light is actually needed to see rope as a rope. இல்லையா? அது சொன்னங்க இல்லையா?
Correct. Yes, that was one example. Very good. Thank you, Ushaji. Next one.
அது clay and pot சொல்லிட்டங்க.
Clay and pot சொல்லிட்டா.
அப்புறம் அந்த இது சொன்னங்க sea in water இல்லையா? எங்க
sea and water.
எங்க forms of water இருந்தாலும் அது கடைசியில நம்ம இப்போ சீல தானே போய் சேர்றது.
The source is the sea. So அந்த sea water evaporate ஆனதுனால தான் நமக்கு ரெயின் வருது. ரெயின்ல இருந்து தான் மத்த forms of water வருது. So the source, it might be a river, it might be a lake, it might be a well, it might be a small pond, it might be a udrani jalam, which Periva, I think I've mentioned this in one of the classes where Periva has said எல்லாம் வெவ்வேறு இடத்துல இருந்தாலும் the source is basically sea water, but the source வந்து of course while the other forms of water are actually drinkable, the source is not, right? So there is a slight distinction there, but adhe madri the manifest state is basically the forms of
gold sonnela, gold and rings ella.
Sister help
யாருமே இல்ல இங்க.
தோ சாந்திஜி மெசேஜ் பண்ணிருக்கா பாருங்க.
ஓ என்ன பண்ணிருக்கா? நான் ஒன்னும் பார்க்கவே இல்ல.
Okay, no worries.
Oh sorry, நான் ஒன்னும் மெசேஜ்க்கே போல ஜி.
No, she was just telling gold and jewelry.
Oh, very good.
So right, gold and jewelry. So the swarnam takes different forms as abharanam, and then what happens?
அதாவது அந்த ஜுவல்லரிக்குள்ள கோல்ட் இல்ல, that is அந்த மாதிரி சொல்ல முடியாது இல்லையா? that is gold தான் various manifestationsல வருது.
ஆமா, the jewelry is made of gold, no doubt about it. You cannot say that jewelry is made of something else. No, the jewelry is made of gold da. But what happens when it becomes manifest in an unmanifest state? Unmanifest na அதோட இப்ப வந்து ஒரு வளை இருக்குன்னா அந்த வளையோட form is lost. What will happen?
அதாவது இப்படி வளை தானே, வளை வந்து
வளை இருக்கு, that valai is no longer a valai. Suppose you are not using, you have one earring, that say that earring is broken, or you want to make something else from that earring. What will you do?
You have to melt.
When you melt it, what little is still gold. So that is the same concept of all the beings that are there. The source is Paramatma. It is the lack of that it is basically that Maya which is there, which makes us see these in different forms. And once that jnanam comes, we can try seeing it like he says in the previous chapter, where he says, I can dog is the same to me, a jnani is the same to me, papi is the same, everybody is the same to me nu solradhu appodan we can do. So manifest unmanifesta irukra gold manifest state la abharanam arudhu. If it breaks, if you melt it, it again becomes gold. But gold has a source which is Paramatma. That is one of his creations, right? So that has also come from him. Only thing, Paramatma example la avarukku mele yarum kadayadu. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Thank you, Ji.
Very nice. Thank you, Shaji. Now, Krishnanji wants to say, yes, I don't mind dwelling in this because the next set is actually relatively easier. So we should be able to finish it quickly. Shanti ji is asking, can we imagine Bhagavan as the goldsmith broadly? So yes, so in fact, it comes in one of the shlokas. So Bhagavan is Bhagavan. He is also Bhagavadam, which is the bhakti. He is also the bhakta. Do you remember the shloka that we learned in, I think it was in the 4th chapter, around 23 or 24. There was one shloka that said, related to yajnam, and then he said everything around that is me. It's a very famous shloka, so many people should know. Correct. So adla vandu ellame naan da appadina solra madri, you can think Bhagavan as a third entity, which is goldsmith, right? But then at the end of the day, the goldsmith is also him, the gold is also him, the ornament is also him. This is just for our understanding, right? So or creator appadina eduthundona, from the unmanifest state it goes to manifest state. Adukku, if you want to imagine that creation as a process where you need a doer, inge vandu doer theva kadayadu. But just for our understanding, I know quite a few people messaged me saying that the class last week was deep. It felt like we understood, but I'm not sure if I understood. Abhinga Madri, a few people had messaged, and I completely understand, because this, which is why this in the chapter or the title is given like that, right? Though it is said as secret, it's the most obvious thing, but it is tough to understand. Adanala da adha vandu guhyam appadinu solradhu. And it is the king of knowledge, because this is the supreme knowledge with which you can actually gain moksha. You can go back to the source. In the knowledge irundaduna namakku vera endha knowledge theva kadayadu. But, and that is why it is tough. So in every shloka that we read, the same example might not apply. அந்த ஸ்லோகத்துல என்ன சொல்லிருக்கோ அதுக்கு ஏத்த மாதிரி we might have to think about the examples that we discussed last week. It could be the rope and snake, when he says, oh, மூடர்கள் வந்து வெவ்வேறு விதமா பாப்பா அப்படின்னு சொல்லும்போது we can think of it as rope and the snake. On the other hand, you can when he says, different beings are there, but they all come from me, we can think of the sea water and the other sources of water. So we can tweak the mind, but the end of the day, the source, the destination, the path, the vehicle, the driver, the Google map, the voice in the Google map, everything is basically Paramatma here. That is how we need to visualize it. It is not different. The source and the destination and the path and the vehicle and the driver and the Google map and the voice, nothing is bhinna bhinam. It is not different. It is the same. We see it differently because we don't have that realization. So that was the crux of the first 10 shlokas. So I think Dr. Surya is saying it would be, think Bhagwan is more of the entire gold. Correct. But for us, when we are starting in this spiritual path, we always associate actions with a doer. இப்ப வந்து ஒரு பொருள் பண்றதுன்னா அது யாரோ பண்ணிருக்கணும் அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி தான். It's the famous the anecdote which is quoted, right? A scientist was reading Bible, and then one person says, I would like to come to your house. He says, okay, you can come. Anga poi pathana, there is this a solar system which is created, a model of a solar system. And then he says, how did it come here? Oh, it just came on its own, abdin solrar. And then the other person says, how can that happen? If the solar system model is there, there should be a creator. So if just a small model ke, if there should be a creator, don't you think for the entire prapanjam there should be a creator? How can it just happen? Abdina, I think I have also mentioned this in one of the earlier classes. So you're right. The goldsmith is not tani, but just for our understanding, we picturize it that way. As we progress through this path, it will all gel into one. We will not see gold different from abharanam, different from the creator, different from goldsmith. It will all be just one in front of us. So yes, that is the way Advaita is also coined. Okay. Now we will go further with so 11 to 20 is actually relatively easy, because he just reiterates the content that he has already stated in previous chapters. Adu mattum illama a couple of things here and there he basically clarifies, saying there is one shloka here. Let's see how we get through that shloka. Now the 11th one. Avajananti ma mudhaha manushim tanum ashritam param bhavam ajanantaha mama bhuta maheshwaram. So ivar solrar enna vandu moodargal, people who don't have understanding of the Parabrahman and the knowledge illadava and the Mahavidya illadava. Enna eppadi papa? They see me as somebody in human form, because in this avataram he's taken a human form. He's speaking as Krishna. So enna vandu manushana enna vandu pakara, and they don't know ajanantaha. They don't know that na vandu ella beings kum maheshwaram, I am the greatest of all beings அப்படிங்கற அந்த பிரக்ஞை அவளுக்கு கிடையாது. என்னையும் ஒரு மனுஷனா தான் பார்க்கறா. So there is also another beautiful interpretation of this. So இதுல வந்து அவதாரம் பண்ணி வரா. அவதாரம் பண்ணி வந்து why that avatara took place, typically for when dharma becomes less powerful and adharma rules over the earth, then I come, yuge I come, and then I make sure that the path of dharma is restored. Usually there is an evil force that is destroyed by the avataram. Another interpretation that is given there, Bhagavan வந்து வரும்போது அந்த அவதாரம் பண்ணி வரும்போது he says, I am actually you all. நான் வந்து அவதாரம் பண்ணி வந்திருக்கேன், நான் மனுஷனா வந்திருக்கேன் இங்க. I am no different from who you are. So it is also one concept of Advaita that we can see there. I am not different. You and I are not different. Aham Brahmasmi. அப்படிங்கிற அந்த தத்துவத்தையும் we can actually interpret that in Bhagavanoda அவதாரங்கள். So avajananti, they disregard. Why do they disregard? They don't pay that respect to the supreme. In that Krishna irukku. Why? Ma moodaha, yaru fools. Why? Because manushim tanum ashritam. They think that I am a mere human. Param bhavam ajanantaha. Param அப்படின்னா இந்த இடத்துல supreme. I am the supreme அப்படிங்கிறது தெரியாம, அந்த பாவம் தெரியாம mama bhuta maheshwaram. They don't understand that I am the greatest of all the jivans and I am the source அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி we should take. So this bhavam, I also have sometimes trouble understanding this, because there are beings and then I am the supreme of the beings, but you know what, I am not different from the being அப்படினு இதுலயே conflict வரும்போது it depends on how we internalize that Parabrahman to reach that Advaita state where we realize that Chidanandam is well within us. It is a long process. We discussed that in the earlier chapters. So and the pakkuvam vara varaikum we see that Parabrahman as somebody different, and then we undergo that process, churning of our mind, the chitta shuddhi, whatever karma that is done, it is done with Ishvara Arpana Buddhihi. Whatever we get, we take it with Prasada Buddhihi. All that we have already seen. But ada panni da, we will reach a point where when he says, I am the greatest Lord of beings, we know we come from the same source. That same Atma is there everywhere. And after all our karma is dissolved, we basically go back to the source. So that is something we all struggle, because ஒரு ஸ்லோகத்துல வந்து நீயும் நானும் டிஃபரெண்ட் இல்ல, இன்னொரு ஸ்லோகத்துல நான் எல்லா பீயிங்ஸ்லயும் நான் தான் கிரேட்டஸ்ட் அப்படின்னு சொல்லும் போது யூ சி ஒன் பர்சன் இஸ் ஹையர் பிளேன்ல இருக்கிற மாதிரியும் நம்ம எல்லாம் கீழே பிளேன்ல இருக்கிற மாதிரியும் அந்த அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் வருது. இன்னொரு இடத்துல பார்க்கும்போது எல்லாரும் சமந்தான் அப்படின்னு சொல்ற மாதிரி வருது. ஸோ வாட் இட் இஸ் அப்படிங்கிற அந்த கான்ஃபிளிக்ட் இஸ் ஆல்சோ தேர். I've always struggled with when I see dushkarmangal, right? When you hear about actions which are completely unacceptable, it might be a murder, it might be abuse, physical abuse. So அந்த எல்லா ஜீவன்களுக்குள்ளேயும் அந்த பரமாத்மா தான் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோம். How can that பரமாத்மா commit such a gory crime? அப்படிங்கிற question I had, and I remember having this discussion with one of my friends long time back. இன்னைக்கு I was thinking, how can this be explained அப்படின்னு நினைக்கும் போது, we can take a simple example of a sweet. So sweet, any sweet, and we discussed this in one of the previous classes also, about how the sweet is formed and the padam, which is important, right? And that padam reach ஆகும்போது தான் when அந்த antakale we actually think of Bhagavan, and our antakalam falls in that particular muhurta where we get moksha, we go back to the source abingar and the realization. So sweet, every sweet is made of sugar, right? The source, any sweet you take, the source is basically sugar. Now though the forms are different, the way the shape is different, and the way it is eaten might be different. One kadichu saapduvom, one pichu saapduvom, one spoon alla saapduvom. So sweets are of different forms. Now and the sweet oda tanma, it has come from sugar. But imagine every dushkaryam that we do, there is a pinch of salt which is added to the sweet. Okay, இன்னைக்கு வந்து I was thinking of an example. How can we, if all the beings are the same, how can Paramatma commit such a bad crime? நம்ம வந்து அவனும் அதே பிரம்மன் தானேன்னு சொல்லும் போது, அப்படிப்பட்ட ஒருத்தர் வந்து எப்படி இப்படி ஒரு கோரமான காரியம் பண்ணலாம் அப்படின்னா, what happens? அந்த ஸ்வீட்ல வந்து every time there is a karma that is done which is not according to dharma. What happens? A pinch of salt gets added. When the pinch of salt gets added, eventually over a period of time, which will be higher, the taste? Will it be sweet or will it be salt? Okay, Haridra is saying sweet. So Haridra, you do this exercise, okay? You make sweet, and then every day you add pinch of salt to the sweet, okay? And then at the end of 4 days, when you taste the sweet, will the sweet be sweet or will it be salty? Gomati ma'am also is saying sweet. Rajeshwari ji is saying salt. No, so quality of the salt. Salt is a salt, right? Okay, eventually every day, say you add it for 30 days, what will happen? At the end of it, it will become salty, right? So the original sweetness that came from the source sugar eventually goes away and saltiness prevails, right? Sweet is no longer sweet. Correct. That is what happens when we take the Manushya Rupam and we basically lead a life that is not according to Dharma. Every time we have an adharmic thought, action, perception that disconnect with Bhagavan, a pinch of salt gets added. Now imagine you also have the sweet has the ability to perform some good deed where the salt sometimes vanishes away, right? And the sweetness comes back. That is what we call good karma. So for our in the manusha janmam inniki vande, why that discrepancy? When I was asking that question, this example எனக்கு convincing ஆனது. I don't know if it is convincing for the satsangam here, but I felt every dushkarmam that we do is basically a pinch of salt that gets added, and eventually what happens is manushan loses that daiviga tanma and he becomes a rakshasa. Though the source is daivikam, because of the salt that gets added, the sweetness is no longer there. So what we have to do, we have to work again and again and over to slowly take away that saltiness from that sweet and restore the sweetness. So the prayatnam that we are having in this class, prayatnam that we are having in reading spiritual texts, in understanding Vedanta, in understanding little bit about Parabrahman and self and Atma, is for us to realize the sweetness which is there in us, because right now the saltiness is prevailing, so we are not able to realize that sweetness which is there inside us. Innik vande periva kripai, I was doing something and this example, and even more than ever I was convinced why some people can do such gory acts when they are also supposed to be that Parabrahma Swarupam abdingumbodhu. This was the one that I was able to convince myself. Modla na convince anadane matvalku solla mudiyum. I felt okay, நம்ம ஒரு தப்பு பண்ணும்போது அந்த salt gets added, so அந்த sweetness போயிடுறது. கடைசியில இந்த sweetness இதுக்குள்ள இருக்குங்கற பிரக்ஞையே இல்ல. Now what we are trying to do, அந்த salt தனியா எடுத்து அந்த sweetness அனுபவிக்கிறதுக்கு தான் we are having this prayatna. So that's what he is saying. என்ன வந்து ஒரு மனுஷனா பார்க்கிறதுனால அவளுக்கு they don't have this realization. மூடர்கள், people who don't have that ஞானம், it is attributed to their karma. That dushkarmam அப்படிங்கிறது something that எவ்வளவு பண்ணிருக்கோம், எவ்வளவு thoughts, எவ்வளவு காரியங்கள் which is hurtful, which is not pardonable at all. I can quote 1,000 in my life I would have done, and that prayachitta is what is happening in all our lives. Therinchu pannalum theriyama pannalum, it is the same, right? For whatever reason, based on the circumstances we all grew up in, we all were exposed to, and the way world is, even things that sometimes we don't want to do, simple things like being happy for a friend who has scored well in class, right? In your friend. So you know, those are things which have to be, you know, genuine emotions. I'm sure many of us fail in that. Even today you can feel very easily sorry for somebody who's suffering. Are we able to feel genuinely happy for somebody who is leading a contented life? Probably not, especially if it is in our first immediate circle. There is a lot of disturbance that causes. Absolutely, even that salt and sugar is just maya, right? But then that ananda swarupam is there, that it is basically like that it always tries to balance that with the chidananda swarupam, right? This salt sugar namakku solradhu is maya. This taste is different, this is different, but at the end of it we are all the same, we are all from the same source. And then so that, like Ushaji had asked, yes, it is that karma, and the karma la vande the inability to use our free will. That free will is what Bhagavan has given us. But even that, you know, when you are a child, when you are dependent on a primal relationship, it is difficult to completely utilize that free will and not be forced by the society, forced by the relationship. So very few even get that bhagyam to utilize that free will. I don't want to do this, but I am forced either by my parents or my siblings or my friends, or you know, the just societal pressure. So even when we don't want to do something, we still end up doing it because we don't exercise that free will to do the right thing. So adu panninatha namakku vande and the karma, that baggage that we come, it will slowly get dissolved. It is like dissolving the salt in water and then washing it away. 12th. So he says moghashaha mogha karmanaha mogha jnanaha vichetasaha rakshasim ahasurim cha eva prakritim mohinim shritaha. So idla vandu ஒரு மோகத்துல பண்ற மாதிரி, which is இந்த இடத்துல மோகம் you can see it as something which is attachment. You can also seeing the devoid of discrimination. We are in the deluded mode, right? So அது எல்லாமே எப்படி இருக்கு? ஆஷா அப்படின்னா we know it is desire. It பிரயோஜனமே இல்லாத அந்த ஆசைகள். மோக கர்மணஹ. So கர்மணஹனா எல்லா actions that we do. பிரயோஜனமே இல்லாத actions. பிரயோஜனமே இல்லாத ஞானம். Sometimes that filter that we apply, I think I discussed this in one of the classes. I don't want to know. This is going to add clutter to my mind and I don't want to know. We all spend so much time in repenting and getting hurt about why somebody didn't tell me something. The justification I apply in my mind, if you don't tell me, it is one less clutter for me in my mind and I don't want to know. So தேவையில்லாத விஷயங்களை வந்து ஒதுக்கி வைக்கிறது. What benefit is it going to give to my spiritual journey, to me? So many things out there which are unnecessary, which we go in search of, which we go read site after site after site. We speak to people call after call after call, which is going to, like Tamil la solra mari, naya paisa ku prayojanam kadayadu. So moghana prayojaname illada jnanam. In that jnanamna information, right? Vichetasaha. Idu vandu in that chetasna something chittam nalla vidamana. Vichetasaha na opposite of that, which is something useless. Idu edukku equivalent? Rakshasim asurim. So rakshasa gunam, asura gunam. So rakshasargal abingarது it is equivalent to the rajasic quality, and asura gunam abingarது equivalent to the tamasic quality. And daiva gunam abingarது is from the sattva gunam. That is what we say. Prakritim mohinim shrita. In that we can even think of it as mohini pisasu, right? They are all pisasu pidichirukku pittu pidichirukkuங்கற மாதிரி, because we are all bound by unnecessary desires, unnecessary actions, unnecessary information, senseless, useless thinking. And the type of qualities we have is similar to the rajasic and tamasic, like rakshasas and asuras. அப்படி இருக்கும்போது it is as though we are bound by, we are in and drowning in that world of mohini, which is moham. That's what he is saying. எவ்வளோ important பாருங்க, என்னெல்லாம் we have to watch out ங்கறதை he has given in this 12th ஸ்லோகம். We have seen in அந்த காம ஏஷ குரோத ஏஷ அதுலயும் பார்த்தோம், where and the desire is the cause for krodha, அதுல இருந்து தான் மத்தது எல்லாமே வருது. So that is important, that asha. So he is quoting that அதுல இருந்து தான் actions வருது, and then what we want to collect and we know, and then once we chase the wrong goal, our mind goes bonkers and we don't even know whether what we are doing is right or not, or sometimes even if we know it is wrong, we still end up doing it. So that is equivalent to having these qualities. And then next idhula vandu okay இப்படி இருக்கு, but then always he usually ஒரு ஸ்லோகம் சொன்னா அதுக்கு நெக்ஸ்ட் வந்து there will be a contradicting statement, right? Okay, மூடர்கள் இப்படி இருந்தானா ஞானிகள் எப்படி இருப்பா, அந்த மாதிரி இங்க மகாத்மாக்கள். So who are these mahatmas? So he says, I want somebody to answer that. Mahatmanah tu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajanti ananya manasaha nyatva bhutadim avyayam. So who are his mahatmanahan சொல்ற mahatmakal. So who are these mahatmakal? நிறைய we read in 4, 5 and 6. Who is a jnani? Correct, Haridra. Jnani is correct. So Mahatmakal அப்படின்னா somebody who has that jnana. Bhumaji has actually messaged me, who knows me, who understands me, who actually Sthita Prajnaha, correct, who understand the Brahman, who focus, Gomati ma'am has said, Sthita Prajnan, who has that single pointed focus on Paramatma all the time without any deviation. And the Jnanam Varathukku vandu, the starting place is doing that karma without attachment. Shantiji is correct. So and the state ku porathukku karma margam is sort of the seed that nourishes it, right? So Mahatmakal vandu enna pannuva, which is what we have already seen before. Daivim prakritim ashritaha. Ava vandu na and the divine quality enakku irukku அப்படிங்கறத வந்து they always think about that. They always take refuge in that divine quality. And then what do? They worship me. They bhajanti அப்படின்னா worship பண்றது. அதெல்லாம் பஜன்ங்கிறது வந்தது. நம்ம வந்து பாடும்போது பஜன்ஸ் பாடுறா அப்படின்னா பகவானை போற்றி பாடுறா, பகவானை குறிச்சு பாடுறா. So they எப்படி பண்றாத அனன்ய மனசக, they don't think about anything else, not devoted to anything else. ஞாத்வா, how do they know why they do why do they have this kind of behavior? Because they know that bhutadim avyayam, of all the beings, source nanda அப்படிங்கறதும் தெரியும். Avyayam, what is avyayam? Avyayam, avyayam means something which does not get destructed, correct, something which is imperishable. Mahatmanaha tu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha. மகாத்மாக்களுக்கு வந்து என்ன தெரியும்? எப்பவுமே வந்து என்னுள்ள இருக்கிற அந்த தெய்வத்தன்மை, அதுதான் நேச்சர். சோ அதை சார்ந்தே எப்பவுமே இருப்பா. And then what? Correct, avinashi. So what do? They celebrate me, they worship me, they pray to me, right? You can think of it in whichever margam you want. எப்படி அனன்ய மனசக, without thinking of anything else. பகவான்கிட்ட போகும்போது மனசு அங்க இருக்கு, but மனசு is thinking about, oh, I want to buy this new car, I hope that Bhagavan blesses me for that. அப்படின்னு இல்லாம the connection that we have with Bhagavan without any expectation. ஏன் அவளுக்கு அது வருது? ஞாத்வா, having known that பூத ஆதிம் அவ்யயம், எல்லா விதமான லிவிங் பீயிங்ஸ்க்கும் ஆதி சோர்ஸ், அவ்யயம் இம்பெரிஷபிளா இருக்கிறது நான் தான் அப்படிங்கிறது they realize. இது in the first 10 வந்து எந்த அளவுக்கு கொஞ்சம் ரொம்ப different from the previous chapters that we have done. I think last class நம்ம பண்ணும்போது எனக்கு வந்து ரொம்ப டிஸ்கனெக்ட் இருந்தது, because we were not able to connect many of that to the usually நம்ம படிக்கும்போது right from ஒரு 3rd 4th ல இருந்து நம்ம இந்த சாப்டர்ல பாத்துப்போமே அப்படிங்கிற அந்த மைண்ட், the shloka number I might not remember, I think you might not remember, but there will be something that rings in our mind and then we'll be able to connect. And the first 10 படிக்கும்போது அந்த கனெக்ஷனே இல்லாத மாதிரி இருந்தது. But in the 10 is very similar to what we have done before. He is just put it in a different way, and he has put it in a way where it justifies the first 10 that he has said. So Krishna vandu, like I said, every shloka that is there in Bhagavad Gita, adlende and shlokathula ஒரு question vandaduna, and shlokathோட question will be the next shloka, answer will be the next shloka. அதுல வந்து நமக்கு என்ன question வருமோ that will be the அதுக்கு தொடர்ந்து வர ஸ்லோகம் will be the answer to that. So for us to realize it's not just random, திடீர்னு வந்து சததம் கீர்த்தயந்தோ மாம் அப்படின்னு சொல்லிட்டு திடீர்னு ரேண்டமா ஞான யஜ்ஞேன, no, there is no randomness there. There is a connection between one shlokam and the next shlokam. Our understanding should be what is that connection. ஏன் வந்து திடீர்னு கிருஷ்ணா இந்த ஸ்லோகத்துல இருந்து அடுத்த ஸ்லோகத்துக்கு, it is like a very meaningful conversation that happens between Krishna and Arjuna. But and the question gadda Arjunanoda mindla, like the first class சொன்ன மாதிரி, we all are Arjunas experiencing that vishadam, experiencing that klesham, not knowing what to do, how to do, and completely in that helpless state. that is why we are reading this and we are trying to internalize Gita. So in the set of 10 it is very similar. So I think many of you who have been attending regularly, idhula padikumbodhu we'll be able to think dhridavrataha, okay, and the single pointed focus oda vandu pannanom appdin avar sollirkar, that it will sort of ring a bell. So I think this set is little bit more understandable than the first. That's what I'm trying to say. Satatam kirtayantaha mam yatantaha cha dhridavrataha namasyantaha cha mam bhaktya nityayuktaha upasate. So idla ellame namakku vandu therinja words. Satatam eppoludum, kirtayantaha, kirtina paadradhu, அது வந்து கீர்த்தனம் அப்படின்னு சொல்றோமே. சோ அவரை வந்து பாடுறது, போற்றுறது, worshipping him. மாம் என்ன, யதந்தஷ்ச அப்படின்னா பிரயத்தனம் பண்றவா. எப்படி பண்றா? திருடவ்ரதாக, ஒரு திருட சித்திரத்தோட பண்றா, திருட சங்கல்பத்தோட பண்றா, ஒரு விரதம் மாதிரி பண்றா பண்றவாளுக்கு. and then he continues, என்ன பண்றா? நமஸ்யந்தஹ, they pray to him. எப்படி பண்றா? மாம் பக்தியா, வித் பக்தி, பக்தியோட பண்றா. and then how do they do it? நித்யயுக்தஹ, they are always steadfast. இன்னைக்கு வந்து எனக்கு இது வேணும், சோ நான் இன்னைக்கு ப்ரே பண்றேன், எனக்கு அது கிடைச்சுடுத்து, I don't want to pray anymore அப்படின்னு இல்லாம நித்தியமும் bound to that devotion. உபாசதே, they actually worship. so satatam kirtayantaha, இதுக்கு முன்னாடி what is the connection? அந்த previous ஸ்லோகத்துல வந்து மகாத்மானஹ, அந்த ஞானி அப்படின்னு சொல்றோமே, அந்த ஞானிக்கும் there was this shloka which was given, and especially அந்த departing டைத்துல வந்து how it should be பக்தியோட இருக்கணும், அச்சலமா இருக்கணும், பகவான் மேல சித்தத்தோட இருக்கணும் அப்படின்னு. there were 3 things that was stated. I think that was in 7th or 8th. Antakale is 8th chapter. I think people with notes will remember better than me. 8th, yes Haridra. So 8th la sonna podu same thing he is saying, enna bhajichundu drida chittatoda, enna namaskarichundu bhaktiyoda nitya yuktama enna worship pandra. So that connection is what? Connection is the mahatmanaha. and then he continues, adhe eppadi pandra அப்படிங்கறது ஞான யக்ஞேன சாப்யந்தே சாப்யன்யே. Oh, I have to split. Jnana yajnena cha api anye yajantah mam upasate ekatvena prithaktvena bahudha vishvatomukam. So idhula vandu romba important aspect that we are all exposed to, he has stated in this shloka. And I think this will be one of the takeaway shloka from this chapter. Jnana yajnena cha api anya yajantah mam upasate ekatvena prithaktvena bahuda vishvato mukam. Ekatvam abdina, what does it signify? So these are all related to philosophies. ஞானத்தினால, யஜ்ஞத்தினால, மத்ததுனால என்ன வர்ஷிப் பண்றவாளுக்கு பகுதா 3 விதமான perception or form or philosophy can be there. Ekatvena, so what will that be? எல்லாருக்கும் தெரிஞ்சதுதான். correct, it is advaitam. Eka அப்படின்னா advaitam, there is no two அப்படின்னு அர்த்தம். And then next another prithak tvena. So what is that? Different. Dvaitam. So where you have Jivatma and Paramatma, which is these two are different. And then the last Bahuda Vishvato Mukam. The third type of philosophy in Vishishtadvaitam. Correct, Haridra. So in the Vishishtadvaitatle you have the Paramatma and you have the Chit and Achit, right? You have the movable and immovable. Ellame form of Bhagavan and the Bhagavan lenda. So idella vandu tani tani அப்படிங்கிறது தான் Vishishtadvaitam. So he is actually undivided one Paramatma, one Brahman அப்படிங்கிறது, which is the Advaitam, the non-dualism. Advaitam. It doesn't say Ekam. It says there is no two. and the coining of word is so important here. Advaitam rendu kadayadu onnu da அப்படிங்கிறது. பிருத்தக்த்வேன எல்லாமே வந்து it is distinct. Paramatma is distinct from Jivatma. These two are different from each other. அப்படிங்கிறது Dvaitam. Dvaitamna two. Bahuda Vishwatomukam. So in the universe la இருக்கிறதுல வெவ்வேறு விதமான beings-ல you have the Chit and the Achit, and then you have Paramatma, which ஒரு வைசேஷிக form of Dvaitam is Vishishta Dvaitam. So in the form la ஞான யஜ்ஞேன. So இது எப்படி சொல்றார்? யாரு வந்து either through yajna or by reading scriptures, ஞானத்தினால யஜ்ஞத்தினால இல்ல வேற ஏதாவது ஒரு வழினால என்ன வந்து பஜிக்கிறாளோ, மாம் உபாசத்தே என்ன வந்து வழிபடுறாளோ, அவளுக்கு மூன்று விதமா இது தெரியறது. எப்படி தெரியறது? ஏகத்துவமா தெரியறது, பிருத்தக்துவமா தெரியறது, இல்ல விவிதமா தெரியறது, டிஃப்ரெண்டா தெரியறது. So he is basically talking about the philosophies here. So one thing that used to bother me is all these philosophies basically came from the same source. And what is the source? The source is Veda. Correct, Haridra. Haridra answer பண்ணிருக்கியா? ஜோத்ஸ்னா answer பண்ணிருக்கியா? Who is answering there? சரி, okay. Okay, so okay, so the source is Veda. Teamwork, okay, right. So you have the same Veda. The philosophies came from Veda. So if sugar vandu source ah irukumbodhu, how can the taste be different? Any object you make from sugar should have that sweetness, right? வேதத்திலிருந்து தான் வந்தது அப்படிங்கும்போது how can there be three different philosophies where one is saying there is no two, one is saying there is two, and one is saying there is this bahuda where you have the chit, achit and the paramatma? Why the distinction? எப்படி வந்து ஒரே வேதத்திலிருந்து how is it possible? It is not based on taste, but it is different forms. No, but the base philosophy is different, Dane. Okay, different steps to reach God. I agree with that. So idella vandu just different paths where you can't interpret it differently, right? Ipo vandu vedathla vandu Bhagavan rendu illa appadina sollita adu eppadi na Bhagavan vandu renda enala interpret panna mudiyum? Bhashyakarar eppadi adu ezhudha mudiyum? Inda Shankararahato, Ramanujarahato, Madhvarahato, how if Veda says there is no two, how can Ramanuja say avar eppadi solla mudiyum? If Veda is saying 2 into 2 is 4, I cannot say 2 into 2 can also be interpreted as 3, no? That is in our mind. அது வந்து நமக்கு அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்டிங் காக. பட் சேம் டெக்ஸ்ட்ல இந்த மேம் ஒரு நீங்க மேத்ஸ் டீச்சர்ஸ் ஒரு தியரம் இருக்கு, அந்த தியரத்துக்கு இதுதான் ப்ரூஃப் அப்படின்னா how can I as a student interpret the theorem differently? The theorem is the theorem. In a right angle triangle, sum of the squares of two sides is equal to the third. Abdinaka, I cannot say something different, right? There is perspective nu vandutale I am giving myself the leeway of interpreting illa. No, there is no interpretation there. If Veda says there is no two, I cannot derive from Veda that there is two. Okay, so this was a revelation for me when doing research about Shankarar in Shanmatam. About Shankarar patti vechadnala, it was obviously Advaitam our paninar abdingiradhu da, and that was the main reason for that avataram of Dakshinamurti, right? So appa vandu how can it be different? Vedas vandu same ah varumbodhu edukku ipdi moonu different idu varna? Apparently in Veda itself there are parts that say Brahman and Jivatma, Paramatma are different. There are other parts that say Jivatma and Paramatma are the same. There are other parts that talk about Vishishtadvaitam. So each of the Acharya have taken that text which is relevant to the philosophy that they believe in and have coined text and philosophy based on that. This is my understanding. I have not heard it from any of the guru directly, but I think it was a very relevant source where I read this, and in fact என்னோட Golu video this was mentioned. So இங்க இவர் இத கொண்டு வந்திருக்கார். He is talking about how அதே பரபிரம்மனை நீ மூன்று விதமா பார்க்கலாம் அப்படின்னா why, because வேதத்திலேந்து வந்த அந்த சோர்ஸ், and in fact பகவத் கீதாவே நம்ம உபனிஷத் சாரம்னு தானே சொல்றோம். வேதத்திலேயே there are parts where it is not two, there are parts where these two are different, there are parts where yes it is different, and there is a vaisheshikam to that, which is the chit and the achit. I thought I will mention in case this question crops up in your mind. And then 16th, so he says idhula different forms neenga panniyaachu. Appo eppadi, how do you actually reach God? இந்த மாதிரி மூணு different formல இருந்தா how do you actually go to him அப்படினு அந்த question வந்ததுனா he says this shloka will remind you of a previous shloka that we have read, which we just discussed. Aham kratuhu aham yajnah swadha aham aushadam mantraha aham eva ajyam aham agnihi aham hutam. So this is very similar to the Brahmarpanam, that shloka where he says nanda and the karta, nanda and the yajna, nanda and the swada, the offering that is done to the pitrus pandrathu swadha. nanda aushadam, because எல்லாத்துக்கும் இந்த யஜ்ஞங்கள் பண்றதுக்கே காரணம் என்ன? அந்த உணவு, மழையிலேந்து உணவு. So அந்த உணவு which is aushadam, உணவே மருந்து, aushadam. I am the mantra that is chanted during the yajna. யஜ்ஞத்துல கொடுக்கப்படுற அந்த நெய்யும் நானே, யஜ்ஞத்துல வளர்க்கப்படுற அந்த அக்னியும் நானே, அந்த யஜ்ஞத்துல என்னெல்லாம் நம்ம சமர்ப்பணம் பண்றோமோ அத்தனையும் நானே. So we can connect this with that Brahmarpanam, that shloka. And then next he continues. So நான் தான் he made a statement, bhuteshwaram அப்படின்னு ஒரு ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட் பண்ணார் இல்லையா, அதோட clarification is the next shloka where he says pita aham asya jagatah mata dhata pitamahah vedyam pavitram omkarah rig sama yajuhu evacha. So he says நான் தான் I am the pita, I am the father, I am the mata, I am the dhata. Dhata is nothing but the person who gives the phala data for everybody. And then he adds one more word here. He says pitamahah. Pitamahah na tata. Appa is pitamahah. So நீ மாதா பிதானா அப்ப இவாளுக்கு மேல அப்படின்னா no, anything beyond that you consider also that I am the source அப்படிங்கறத சொல்ற பிதாமஹ. So you can think of any lineage, the source is me. Vedyam, so I am the knowledge, and that knowledge is pure. I am the omkaram. இது முன்னாடியே நம்ம பார்த்தோம், அந்த sound and the dhvani, the omkaram and the pranavam we saw in the 8th chapter. And then I am the Veda, Rig Yajuhu and Sama Vedam Nanda அப்படின்னு சொல்றார். So இதுல in the two shlokas it is very similar to what we have read, and because he is justifying how that bhuteshwaram அப்படிங்கிறது na. So இதுல பக்தனும் na, bhagavanum na, bhagavadamum na, and one who shows devotion, the bhakta is me. Bhagavadam, which is the devotion, that is also me. Bhagavan, who is to whom we show that devotion, we offer that devotion, that is also me abdingra. And then the last three kind of gel together. So gathir gatihi bharta prabhuhu sakshi nivasah sharanam sukrit prabhavah pralayah sthanam nidhanam பீஜம் அவ்யயம். சோ இதுல கதிஹி அப்படின்னா நமக்கெல்லாம் வாழ்க்கையில இருக்கிற அந்த கோல், நமக்கெல்லாம் என்ன கதி? பரகதி. That is what we want. பர்த்தா அப்படின்னா one who supports. That is why her husband is called bharta, because he is supposed to be the supporter for the wife and the family. பிரபுஹு, அவர்தான் அந்த தெய்வீக ஸ்தானத்துல இருக்கிறவர். சாக்ஷி, அவர்தான் சாட்சியாகவும் இருக்கிறவர், விட்னஸ் ஆகவும் இருக்கிறவர். நிவாசக, எந்த அபோர்ட்ல? த அபோர்ட் ஆஃப் சரணம் சுகிருத்து. யாரு என்கிட்ட வராளோ அவளுக்கு அந்த சரணமாவும் நான் தான் இருக்கேன், கடைசியில சேரற இடமும் நான் தான் இருக்கேன். சுகிருத் அப்படின்னா யாரு நம்ம ஹிருதயத்துக்கு நல்லது நடக்கிறாளோ, யூஸ்வலி இட் டினோட்ஸ் ஃப்ரெண்ட், அந்த சுகிருத்தாவும் நான் தான் இருக்கேன். பிரபவக அப்படின்னா த சோர்ஸ், காரணம், அதுவும் நான் தான். பிரளயம் அப்படின்னா த டிசல்யூஷன், அந்த பிரளயமும் நான் தான் இருக்கேன். எப்படி இருக்கேன்? ஸ்தானம் நிதானம். நிதானம் அப்படின்னா இந்த இடத்துல ஒரு நிதியாக, பொக்கிஷமாக இருக்கேன், ஒரு பொக்கிஷ ஸ்தானமாக இருக்கேன். கடைசியில சொல்ற ஐ எம் த சீட், பீஜம். What kind of seed? Avyayam. I am the one who does not perish. So அந்த பகவத் கீதால 6 பிரிச்சுண்டோம்னா, ஃபர்ஸ்ட் இதுல துவம் பத்தி பேசினோம். இதுல the next 6 is tat, where he talks about Bhagavan. And then the last 6 loosely translates to Tattvam Asi. Everything is the same. அப்படிங்கறதா அந்த last 6. So இதுல, which is why in the setல there is a lot about the kalyana gunangal of Bhagavan. So golun and the ultimate gatiyum nanda, supporterum nanda, the supreme parabrahmanum nanda, sakshiyum nanda, நீ இருக்கும் ஆலயமும் நான் தான், நீ சரணாகதி பண்ணேனா அந்த சரணாகதியும் நான் தான், உனக்கு நல்லது நினைக்கிற அந்த ஃப்ரெண்டும் நான் தான், சோர்ஸும் நான் தான், அந்த டிசல்யூஷனும் நான் தான், ஒரு நிதியாக இருப்பவன் நான் தான். And then the source, which is the bijam, the imperishable source, is also me. And then he continues different forms, which is why I said this is pretty straightforward to understand. இதுவும் I think it was in the chapter where he same chapter, Brahmarpanam, 4th தான். இந்த மழை காரணம், யஜ்ஞத்திலேந்து மழையிலேந்து அன்னம், அன்னத்திலேந்து உற்பத்தி, that happens, the creation that happens in the மாதிரி. He says tapami aham aham varsham nigrinhami utsrijami cha amritam cha eva mrityuhu cha sat asat cha aham arjuna. So எல்லாம் நான் தான். தப்பம் அப்படின்னா it is basically heat. வருஷம் அப்படின்னா நமக்கு தெரியும் மழை. மிருத்யுஹு அமிர்தம், இறப்பும் நான் தான், பிறப்பும் நான் தான். நான் சத்தும் நான் தான், அசத்தும் நான் தான். So he said சதசத் ச அகம் அர்ஜுன. சத்தும் நான் தான், அசத்தும் நான் தான். We talked about சராச்சரம், எது நகருமோ எது நகராதோ, எது யோசிக்கும் தன்மை உண்டோ, எதுக்கு யோசிக்கும் தன்மை இல்லையோ. இதுல slight variation of that word. So I am the heat, I am the one who supports the bhumi, I am the rain, I am the mrityuhu, I am the amritam, which is the immortality. I am also the one that can think, I am also the one that cannot think. And then a slight change of path from the 20th. I think 20th kaprama he is going to continue the chain, but we will do the 20th shloka and then we'll recap in the next class. So idula he says traividyaha mam somapaha puta papaha yajnehi ishta swargatim prarthayante te punyam asadya surendra lokam ashnanti Divyan Divi Devabhohan. So இதுல we talked about how Brahma ஓட யுகங்கள், சஹஸ்ர யுகம், and then நீ ஓரளவுக்கு பண்ணேனா you go to Brahma Logam, and then after that you come back, because once that whatever you have good karma you have done gets exhausted, then you return back. இதேதான் இங்கேயும் சொல்றார். அதை எப்படி எந்த வேர்டுல கோட் பண்றார்? சுரேந்திர லோகம்னு சொல்றார். He does not say மோக்ஷா. புண்ணியம் பண்ணி சுரேந்திர லோகம், ஸ்வர்க்கம் வரைக்கும் போறோம் அப்படிங்கிற மாதிரி. திரைவித்யாக, இந்த 3 வேதங்களையும் தெரிஞ்சவா. சோமபாகா, இந்த சோமபானம் அப்படிங்கிறது இந்த யாகத்துக்கு பயன்படுத்துறது. I think there is mention of that in Veda. It is said it is from a special plant from the Himalayas. So சோமபானம், அதுவும் யாரு அத பருகிறாளோ, அத பருகிறது அப்படிங்கறது அந்த யஜ்ஞங்கள் பண்ணி அதோட பலனை அனுபவிக்கிறாளோ. Puta papaha, those who are basically washed away from their sins. அவளோட பாப்பங்கள் எல்லாம் கழிஞ்சாச்சு. எப்படி? Because they worship through யக்ஞைஹி, யாகங்கள் மூலமாக அவரை வந்து வழிபட்டு ஸ்வர்க்கம் வேணும்னு பிரார்த்திச்சு ஸ்வர்க்கத்துக்கு போறா. பிரார்த்தையந்தே தே புண்ணியம் ஆசாத்திய, இதெல்லாம் பண்ணதுனால வேதங்கள் படிச்சு சோமபானம் அந்த அந்த யஜ்ஞத்தோட பலனை அனுபவிச்சு பாப்பங்கள் எல்லாம் கழிச்சு ஸ்வர்க்கம் வேணும்னு பிரார்த்தனை பண்ணி அந்த புண்ணியம் வந்தவாளுக்கு சுரேந்திர லோகம், சுர இந்திர லோகம், சோ தேவலோகம், அது வந்து அஷ்னந்தி, they basically reach there, they enjoy that pleasure. என்ன pleasure? திவ்யான் திவி தேவ போகான், தேவர்கள் எப்படி வந்து செலஸ்டியல் பீயிங்ஸா இருந்துண்டு நம்ம ஜென்ரலாவே இந்திரலோகம்னாலே வந்து போகங்கள்னு சொல்லுவோமே, சோ அந்த மாதிரி they will be able to enjoy that bhogam, they become bhoktas but in the surendra lokam. So in the 10 was relatively easier to understand because he is just giving a little more explanation around how I am not different, because whatever you think of anything around you, I am that, adanala I am not very different from the bhutani அப்படிங்கிறது தான் இங்க சொல்றேன். I will upload the shlokas for you to practice. Please do practice, and next class we will revise this 10, and it will be nice if somebody can do the explanation for these 10 shlokas. I hope everybody enjoyed the class. And in the 10 was quite interesting, especially because there was this mention of the 3 tattvas there. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Mahaparivasharanam. Thank you all for joining.